Hey, Rob Chadwick here, Director of Education and Training for the USCCA, and this is Meet the Pressers.
Meet the Pressers with Matt Mallory and Klint and Rob. Brought to you by Public Safety and Education and the Trigger Pressers Union.
This episode is brought to you by Sabre Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis, Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Welcome, everybody, to Meet the Pressers. Meet the Pressers is a safe place for trigger pressers to congregate and fellowship and talk about training, guns, gear, gadgets, political activism, you name it, we can talk about it here. This is my special co-host. You're always special, Matt. Matthew Mallory, and Matt's going to introduce our guest for this evening.
Hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We've got Rob Chadwick, somebody I've known for a little while. We've hit it off and talked, and he's got a lot of phenomenal background in law enforcement, all the way up at the federal level, and he brings a new focus with the USCCA's training division, and I'm excited to see what he's got going forward. So I don't want to release too much of his background because you know if I say too much, he might have to get me in the middle of the night. So I'll let him give a little bit more in-depth information on his background because it is very very long. And Rob, how the heck are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm excited to be here, Matt. I appreciate the opportunity, Matt and Clint. It's been good to get to know you guys over the past year or so, and kind of join this community. As you know, I came out of government service for the last 30 years, and this is all kind of new to me. Intentionally kind of kept my head down and focused on what I was doing, on the job, so to speak. So getting into this world and actually being able to have conversations freely is pretty liberating. So I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, a lot of times I've had the opportunity to work with folks that were in that sector, and now they're taking on more of a public role like you are. And you say, "Hey, you want to be on a podcast? You want to tag me on your thing? You want to take a selfie?" And they're like, "Ah."
Right.
Yeah, the gray man is hard to get out, right?
It is, and there's a lot of good that comes with that too. But it's great to be, in a country that does have this medium that allows us to express our opinions freely and exchange ideas. And so, this is exactly what I'm all for.
It's when you say it's liberating, it really sets the tone, the government side and then the free press side, or more so the commercial side of it, if you will. It's cool to hear you say that. And I think that's great things are ahead. So that being said, what's on the horizon for USCCA and the background of what you're bringing to the background from your background, I should say?
Yeah, well, for those your listeners that are not familiar with me at all, I came from the FBI. I actually retired last year after 30 years in law enforcement. Started my career in Fairfax County, Virginia, with the police department there, where I grew up. Loved every second of that. It was my dream career. I was a canine handler. Nice. Never thought I'd leave, but had the opportunity to go with the Bureau. My uncle was an FBI agent, and kind of followed his footsteps somewhat. And again, had just what I consider a charmed career with the FBI. My last assignment, which sort of brought me to the USCCA ultimately, was I was fortunate enough to be selected to run the tactical training unit at Quantico. So our unit was responsible for ensuring the operational readiness of all of our special agents and FBI personnel around the world, and going out into the field, both domestically and internationally, and training our state, local, federal, tribal, international law enforcement partners in street survival tactics and that sort of thing. So just a absolute blast. Such an honor to represent the United States and law enforcement in general, and then to have this opportunity to retire. At the end of that run, I kind of thought I'd just maybe be mixing paint at Home Depot or something, and this kind of fell out of the sky. Really, it's a long story there, but just an incredible organization that you guys are both familiar with, and I really am enthusiastic about where the company is right now and what the future is, because I think they get it right in terms of the messaging, the intentionality of yes, this is definitely a pro-gun, Second Amendment type of company, but at the end of the day, we just want to provide concerned Americans with a means of self-defense. It doesn't have to be a gun. Obviously we talk a lot more about that. I know what this show's all about, but there are plenty of people out there that maybe aren't ready for a firearm yet, or maybe will never touch one, and they're still very deeply concerned about their safety and the safety of their loved ones. And so my vision for this organization, Matt, is to provide the best, most common sense, well, I won't say common sense because that probably doesn't exist today, but reasonable approach to training people soundly, safely, effectively, how to protect themselves and those that they care about.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
I first got the USCCA Concealed Carry and Home Defense Fundamentals curriculum in 2013, and I've been teaching it ever since. And for many years as an independent training counselor, I would tell those instructors that I was certifying, like, hey, we're not making gun instructors here, although a gun is a big part of a lot of the training. We're making defensive instructors here. So take the time to show your students what a tourniquet is, because that will solve a lot more problems than a gun will. Take the time to really help people hone that discipline so that they can be aware and recognize when things are going sour and make the choice to just, I'm walking away. Those kind of things are what are going to save more lives than maybe the gun will. And as you said, it's something that would be appealing to someone that's maybe not ready to exercise that Second Amendment right.
Yeah, that's right, Klint. And it's funny. I one of the things in my background that people like to talk about is I was incredibly fortunate to have served on the protection details for many of our attorneys general and FBI directors. I served as an agent in charge for William Barr when he was attorney general. Loved every second of that assignment. But based in DC, having access to Quantico all those years and all that training and all those reps and all those trigger presses, the reality is, if we had to go to guns at any point during one of those executive protection missions, we had failed. So that early detection and avoidance is key. It's not as sexy as it's displayed on movies and television, but man, that's the name of the game for all of us, right? We just really, at the end of the day, want to go home to our loved ones and get on with our lives.
Yeah, you make a good point as far as, I call it the trifecta of tools: lethal, less lethal, and medical. And so many people just focus on that firearm. They don't, I got a handgun. I'm like, great. What other tools do you have? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, pepper spray, a flashlight, tactical pen. Do you have any physical defensive tactics, wrestling training, anything like that? How are you going to use your mind? What about your voice? What verbalization? All these other things that I consider in that that less lethal category. That majority of people are going to use that probably, most likely, and probably have used that more than they've used a gun ever in their life, especially in a violent encounter.
Oh, no doubt about it, man. It's so you guys being trainers, both of you, I know, are training all the time, working with people, no matter who you are. And I used to say this at Quantico to my guys and girls all the time: no matter who you are, even if you're on the hostage rescue team, which is our elite level team at Quantico, by definition, you have a finite amount of time to devote to training, period. So you really have to identify what are those things that are so critical that if you screw them up, it'll be catastrophic, right? And to me, if you're going to carry a firearm, you better be able to shoot it very accurately. And then also the medical piece, right? Because chances are in that type of situation, you're going to get hurt, or someone you care about is going to be hurt, and you better know what you're doing, because if you screw that up, it'll be catastrophic. So, identifying what those critical things are and then devoting the requisite an appropriate amount of time to getting those things right before you get into the sexy stuff and all the, fast roping out of a helicopter or whatever that, the aspirational stuff is great, but the foundation is what you really have to concentrate on.
Well, that's a great point. I think too many people will, I'll use the word squander. They'll squander their time, effort, and energy, their finance to do training that's not applicable to their own personal lives. I have so many people that show up to the range and they're running a carbine, and I'm like, oh, cool. Is a carbine part of your home defense plan? No, but I just like to shoot it. Okay, but do you carry a gun and defend your child every day? Yeah. What do you carry? Glock 43. How often do you train with it? Not much. I don't like to shoot it. And you get those kind of conversations like, well, what are you most likely going to need to do? Use that Glock 43, or are you going to, in the middle of the night, have time to go in your cabinet and take that rifle out and 3 to the left and 2 to the right? Like, let's reevaluate your training strategy here, make things more applicable.
That's a great point, man. And again, I'm not disparaging. Like, there are plenty of great training opportunities, and people, especially, following the global war on terror, you got all these heroes that are back in country now, and they're putting on incredible training for these people that want to go and learn. And I'm not knocking that at all. What I'm saying is, remember the fundamentals, get really good at those, and then do some of the aspirational stuff. That's the important thing. That's the mark of what I consider a professional.
It's that stepping stone.
Yeah, I want to say it was Chris Serino. I'm not entirely sure if it was Chris Serino. I want to say it was Chris Serino said to me that the advanced stuff is just the fundamentals in a different context.
Got that right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I'm going to give that to Chris Serino. I think that was him that said that. And if it was someone else, I apologize that I misremembered that.
Was that the episode that Trump called him when he was on the...
No, that was actually, I had the opportunity to hang out with him at NRA World Shooting Championship. We had breakfast every morning at the same time, and we shared hotel bacon. Yeah, that was cool to talk to him. But so I recently was able to take part in a presentation that you gave on basically how personal security in this world that we have, and the world that we have today is not the same as it was 2 years ago, 5 years ago, most certainly 10 or 20 years ago. Could you tell us, like, maybe 10,000-foot view on what that course is about, and maybe where it came from? What was the inspiration for you to develop that presentation?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you attending that, and that talk that you sat in on not too long ago came out of a talk that I developed after responding. And so this is several years back when I was assigned to the FBI SWAT team in Columbia, South Carolina. We had the church shooting in Charleston at the Mother Emanuel AME Church, where the would-be white supremacist walked in and murdered 9 people at a Bible study. And my team responded to that. And I'll tell you, man, in 30 years of law enforcement, still the most heartbreaking crime scene I've ever seen. Absolutely devastating. What struck me the hardest about that, and again, my role with the FBI through most of my career was involved in the active shooter response training. That was part of my, mission at Quantico, was leading our training part of that for our first responders nationally. But that scene in particular really hammered home for me how fragile people are and how unlikely the average human, and I'm not criticizing these victims at all, please understand that, but it's just human nature. When you as a person are threatened, your life is threatened in an emergent fashion, and you have never given thought to what you would do, you're going to freeze. And that's what happened. It was very apparent. Most of those people in that basement died right where they sat. And I'll tell you this, man, it's not talked about a lot. There were 77 shell casings on the flat church. That was a 45 caliber Glock handgun. So you can imagine how many reloads. And so the point there is that killing took a long time.
Yeah.
And, it's one of those things where you're just not going to react. So following that event, Klint, my boss, the SAC at the time, asked me to put together some type of a presentation to help us reassure the citizens of South Carolina that it's still safe to go to church. It's still safe to go to synagogue. It's still safe to go to mosque. We gave that talk. I developed something and gave it my little church, very small church in South Carolina. We had 1,500 people show up. We didn't advertise it.
Wow.
So we knew there's a real curiosity there. There's a hunger for information. So from that point on, I just started, reiterating and honing in on the message. And the message is this, one, you have to have a plan, and that plan has to be developed ahead of time. Just mentally, psychologically, physiologically, you will not respond unless you've come up with something ahead of time. And then two, so I was at Quantico when George Floyd was killed, and then that the summer of unrest and the defund the police. And the reason I bring that up is in my job, in my capacity, traveling the country, working with our first responders all over the country, I saw a sea change in how our first responders, our law enforcement officers are reacting. We've seen it in the data. This is not political at all. I'm not trying to get political here, but the data numbers don't lie. In the last 3 years, law enforcement response times on average in this country have doubled. So from the time you call the police or you call 911, which is still what you're supposed to do, double it from just 3 years ago. So my whole point there is you gotta take responsibility for yourself. You must accept that you are a stakeholder in your own security and your own survival and that of your loved ones. And what are you going to do? How do you develop this plan? What's right for you? I want to have these sober, realistic conversations with people. Which is why USCCA, that's what we do. That's our message. And then if you're hungry for that training, that's what we provide.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I had it was probably about a year, almost 2 years ago. I was teaching a class in Virginia, and it came to me where I had students just saying some of the things they were saying. It just seemed like they were ready to, in a mall, active killers in the mall. I call them active killers, not shooters. Yep. You're in a mall, and I'm gonna go and run and attack this active killer. And I was like, okay. I said, do we know what capabilities they have? Do we know what weapons they have? You don't have a ballistics vest on. You don't have a rifle. What if they have a rifle? And they're like, well, I want to do something. I said, well, I want you to be a good Samaritan, but I want you to be a smart good Samaritan. And I've been professing that a lot. And I came up with a thing I call the pyramid of priorities. So you, family that you love, friends that you care about, complete strangers that you owe nothing to. You got to keep your priorities in order. You carry a gun to protect you. Secondary, it's your family that you love. Third, tertiary is your friends that you care about. If you go to help a complete stranger and you're not prepared for it, you could have possibly just pulled yourself out of your friends and family's lives forever. So
yeah, no doubt. Well, and the backside of that too, that I often talk about is, if you choose to do that, and God bless you if you do,
exactly.
You need to understand that there are others that may very well, have a concealed weapon. Law enforcement is coming. It's a fog of war. They're not going to know what's happening. There's a real possibility that this turns tragic.
Yeah.
So it's a whole thought process. And again, something you have to have thought through and decided upon ahead of time, right? Because your brain is not going to function at that level requisite to get you through that like you think it is.
Yeah, well, it goes back to the planning. I know Matt has always said, and I steal this from him all the time, body can't go where the mind hasn't been. I always like to say, hey, even a half-assed plan is better than no plan whatsoever. And, in those places where we're there constantly, we can develop and hone and practice and really woodshed and table read and walk through different types of planning. But even when we come into that area that we haven't been before, that mall, that shop, that strange house, whatever, we need to be able to recognize those escape opportunities to cover the concealment and make that plan on the fly. When you look at the Vegas shooting, and again, I'm not at all saying it was anyone that was there enjoying that concert's fault, but imagine how many less people would have been victimized had they just known where to run to, where the exits were.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's all part of that pre-planning process that folks that take on the responsibility to defend themselves, whether that be with a gun, especially if it's with a gun, but even if it's just, they got pepper spray or they just want to get home to their family, that's something that's real easy for them to really do. It doesn't cost much money, but you have to be disciplined to do it and know to do it.
Yeah. The last thing I'll add to that, Klint, and again, this is not a plug for my company. I just want people to understand, and most of your audience probably will already. But there was a celebrated case here maybe a year ago where the young man took that. It was a would-be active shooter in a mall, and he made some phenomenal shot. I want to say it was like 75 feet, maybe longer than that. And, I think he registered 8 or 9 out of 10 hits on the would-be shooter, which is phenomenal accuracy. And again, celebrated for cause. But in my mind, of course, I'm thinking, well, where'd that 10th bullet go?
Yeah.
Right. In a crowd, in a mall, because as you know, there is no Good Samaritan exemption, right? There is no, hey, I was trying to do the right thing with the guns. Man, you're out of luck. And I promise you, your homeowner's insurance ain't going to cover you.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you better have yourself understand like the full picture. It ain't romantic. This is serious business.
When we see stuff like with Kyle Rittenhouse and I think Elijah Dickinson is the one you're referring to, it was in the mall that did that shot. And, cases like that, I call it the 4 horses of your apocalypse. You've got criminal, you got civil, you got mental, you got jury of public opinion. And too many people just focus on the criminal. They just think, well, I'm, legally I can do it. Well, and I always say, just because the law says you may doesn't mean you must. You're still going to have other things that could affect your life. I mean, mental right there. You're going to have sleepless nights, and the mark of Cain's going to be, brought upon you. So there's a lot at stake.
Well, I mean,
you guys know, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you guys know, if you use a firearm, right, and it's public, and you shoot or kill somebody, half this country is going to hate your guts forever. Like, that's just the way we are. That's a fact of life in American society now. So, you're going to be a pariah. Now, you could be a hero, to some, and you're going to be, it's just, are you ready? Because your life as you knew it is fundamentally over.
Yeah, totally.
Well, it kind of goes back to that litmus test that we teach in the CCHDF class. If fear of death or going to jail is second in your mind, and the necessity of using that gun to defend yourself from an attack that you didn't start and you couldn't get away from, then fight with righteous violence, end the threat as quickly as possible, but be prepared to deal with whatever cards fall on you. And if the answer to that is no, then, man, do everything you can to avoid that situation or get the hell out of Dodge.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
For sure. And then, when you were saying as far as the medical earlier, that's spot on. I'll reference the Buffalo, New York top shooting. And I'll say, what if you were standing there at that point and the shooter came in and shot a kid, and the kid's sitting beside you bleeding out, and you have no tourniquet? Yeah. I never want you to say, well, Matt said I should have gotten a tourniquet. I guess I should have. It's too late now. And then try to makeshift it with a belt. Carry a damn tourniquure. All right. This is unprecedented time. We see more people now with prosthetics. Why? Because tourniquets have been applied, and they were saved over there in the battlefield. Back when I was in the Army, they didn't issue them. I mean, I went to combat lifesaver training, but they didn't issue them back then. They didn't issue them to law enforcement when I first started in law enforcement. Now it's a little more common where agencies in the military issues tourniquets, but I mean, it saves lives.
Yeah, hell, when I first started teaching, instructors never talked about med kits and stuff like that. Like, oh, no, consult a professional. It's like, come on, man. I carry my gun on me every day that I can do so legally. Mm-hmm. And I've been carrying for a number of years. And I also carry a pain in the ass leg cuff medical kit with me. That's frankly a pain in the ass, but I put it on, I put my gun on, like, all right, I put my med kit on. I've had to use that med kit a few times, car wrecks, different things that I've come across. I've yet to have to shoot someone in the chest a bunch of times, and I hope that never happens. But I choose to carry the gun, and it would make sense that you would choose to carry that medical kit. One of the things you said in that presentation that was really, I hadn't actually connected it, and when you said, I'm like, oh, he's absolutely right. And I may not get the terminology right, but it's kind of like I don't know if you're familiar with Colonel David Grossman, but he talks about how denial kills you multiple ways. And one of the things you said, that people normalize violence, or they maybe deny it's happening,
it's that bias towards normalcy.
That's what it is.
Yeah, your brain in a hyper stressful situation will try to it has this bias towards convincing you that it's probably not a gunshot. That was probably a car backfire, or this developing situation. It's got to be a drill. Your brain will try to trick you into like that's just normal, right? So we have to understand these things ahead of time and recognize them for what it is, right? And plan to countermand, because it's just part of your body's defense system. So that bias towards normalcy is a real thing.
I was curious
self-preservation.
I was curious about that, because that must be a learned trait from that we've learned through society over the years. Maybe it's desensitizing to violence or things like that, or we're so used to looking at the world through a little screen. Or I think Kevin Michalowski a couple of years ago did an article on how people don't believe it unless they see it through their TV set. And he had a couple different videos of like stores getting robbed and guys just watching it through their camera while they recorded it.
Oh yeah.
That's curious. I'd love to learn more about the science behind that one, but I absolutely have observed that even in my own personal life. Oh no, that's not, is it? Nah.
Right. Well, and I think you guys probably saw the footage from that couple. I want to say it was somewhere in New York, Buffalo. They were shoveling the driveways.
Yeah.
Got in the pissing, and they're standing out there holding a cell phone as this guy is walking out the door, loading a gun and fires it. And she continues to record
Her getting
as if
shot.
this.
Yeah. Well,
it's unbelievable.
People don't go to the zoo and look at the animals. They go to the zoo and look at the animals.
Yeah,
they're always looking through their phone. This is reality to folks.
Yeah. In my classes, I'll do something that I started doing. I can't remember how it was within the past year, probably. And I'll say, who here has never been punched in the face? And I'll get some students will be like, I'm not telling, right? But most of them that haven't, they'll raise their hand. And I go, can you imagine being punched in the face the first time? It's probably going to hurt. You're probably going to go, oh shit, that hurts. Did you see him punch me in the face? Did he really punch me in the face? Have you been punched in the face? They're in denial. They're in a denial phase. It's that, and then you punch an MMA fighter in the face, then they'll still have denial, but it'll be a lot smaller window as they're probably saying, I can't believe he punched me in the face.
Well, this stems back to recognition. If through frequent and realistic training, we can learn to harness the power of recognition. So you guys, having done the stuff that you've done, probably will recognize someone going for a gun in their shirt probably faster than I would, because I've never seen it in real life. I've seen it in training, but I have not seen it in the same, frequency that maybe you guys have in your law enforcement career, because you've been there, done that. And that's why ultimately, once we get to a level of competency with whatever intellectual training that we get, we want to try to get into that realistic training like you guys, like we've all done with like UTMs and things like that, to where people can actually study human behavior and what it looks like 2 steps before the thing happens. Yeah. I remember Blower talked about it. This is kind of funny. Tony Blower was on the show once, and he says, I always ask these guys, and if you know Blower, he's very colorful, but he basically said, okay, a guy approaches you from the side at an ATM and you see him reaching in his shirt for a knife or something. He says, what are you going to do? And he says, everyone says, well, I'm going to counter and move to the left and take control. And he says, no, you're not. You're going to go, oh shit, he's going for a knife. Oh shit, this is actually happening. He said, that's probably what you're going to do. Yeah, especially if you haven't trained in that level of context before and have that recognition. So that's probably where that stems from.
Yeah, you hit it on the head too when you were saying, as far as like, I think one of you guys had said something about news stories and such, and I'll tell my students that I'll watch the news. We all hate the news; it's death and despair. But we can learn what works, what doesn't work, what's common, what's happening nowadays, what's what bad guys are doing, as far as like stealing cars and going to department stores and running out the front door with armfuls of clothing and stuff. That's the kind of stuff. Now we got that in our toolbox and our neural pathways, so we're a little bit more in tune with it, and we see it happening. We're not going to be like, are they really doing that? We're like, oh, no. I've seen this. I know this happens. So what do I need to do? Run, Forrest, run, not stand there going with the camera or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So have you found what's been the biggest challenge for you going from the law enforcement military, especially working at that level? Not to disparage the beat cop in like Emporium, Pennsylvania, but FBI, that's pretty much tip of the spear when it comes to law enforcement, I would guess. What have been the challenges from going from that world into a strictly civilian world when it comes to training?
Yeah, the training piece. I tell you, I've been, again, not trying to blow smoke, but that's what brought me here. So when I left, when I was getting ready to leave, I'd made the decision to retire from the bureau, and my partner and I, another agent that I worked with for years, we decided to start our own consulting company, and we wanted to have the ability to train civilians, so we needed to get credentialed. And again, I told you guys at the beginning, I wasn't part of this world, so I had never heard of the USCCA. A friend of mine, Doug Collier, is a training counselor in South Carolina where I lived. He had worked with me and was a great instructor for us at Quantico for a lot of years, and he and I worked together for a lot of years in South Carolina. So he was hosting a instructor development class for the USCCA, the CCHDF instructor. Signed up for that. I was really impressed with the onboarding. I was really impressed with the whole thing. Now, I will tell you, and as the director of training, this is something that I've got to address. Sitting in that class, we probably had 10 students, and and you've seen this, Klint, and Matt too, I'm sure. You go to an instructor development class, there's probably 4 or 5 that are going to be excellent instructors. There's probably 3 or 4 that are going to be decent, right? Kind of middle of the road. And there's always going to be 2 or 3 that should never teach a human being to do anything. Like, now the problem is all of those guys and they were all guys in the class, are instructors. So that has been my frustration, is how do we, and I'm not disparaging anybody, right? But my mission in life now is to help raise the overall bar, raise the public perception of, what, this is okay. Your local firearms instructor, sometimes, and depending on, the person's initial interaction, I always say this is a pretty intimate relationship. When someone makes the choice to figure out, how do I protect my family? I need to go get advice from someone, and you seek out an instructor, and that's a very trusting relationship. Mm-hmm. And when that instructor is not what I consider really locked in, really professional, highly disciplined, it kind of taints the whole ecosystem, I guess, or the entire profession is damaged, right? Because that person goes home and goes, that person was a clown. He read off the PowerPoint, or he really didn't know what the hell he was doing, or that was just really disappointing, at least a sour. And that's the only time they'll ever go to any kind of training like that. Yeah. So my frustration is, the quality control. I really am serious about trying to, first support our instructors, right? Figure out what is it that we can do as an agency, as a company, to support them, and then by definition raise the bar, not just for the USCCA. I want this should apply to every human being who's out there training others. Needs to take it very seriously and be continually looking to hone their craft and be as professional as possible.
Yeah, one of the biggest mistakes I've seen, and a lot of this kind of inconsistency, is at the training counselor level. And I saw this with the NRA and with USCCA in some cases, and some of the other organizations that I've been involved with over the years. And I think when someone takes on that role as a training counselor, that's a mentor, man. Oh, yeah. And have there been some people in my career as a training counselor maybe I shouldn't have certified? I bet if I go back and look at the list, perhaps there is. I mean, I'm sure, everyone makes choices and decisions at that moment that may or may not have been the best. But for the most part, when I felt that person wasn't up to snuff, I really went out of my way to try to give that person opportunity to work with them and help to develop them. And that's one of the things I liked about the USCCA program, because it did approach it more as an instructor development, not an instructor qualification. So it gave me the flexibility as an independent training counselor, where I could hold off on someone's certificate, have them come work with me for a few more classes, maybe work with them one-on-one, maybe go watch them teach something under my tutelage, and then finally sign off on them, which was a very, very freeing for me as a training counselor. But unfortunately, not every training counselor approaches stuff that way.
Well, I was going to say, good on you for taking that responsibility. And at the end of the day, I get it. Every one of these people is a business person, and you have to make a business decision. And for example, I think you pay like $600 to go to a training certified instructor class for the USCCA, and that's a lot of money. But it's not a ton of money for the training counselor, because he's probably splitting that with the agency, and I don't know what the economics are, but they're not getting all that money. And you as the training counselor or whoever was, you have to make the decision. All right, I've agreed to give this person most of my weekend, right? So it's a 2-day class. They come back, and now you're not getting any more money. to continue to hold this person's hand, trying to get him up to pass must. Like we have to, and my job now in this role is to reimagine that entire program. I'll tell you one thing that struck me was when I first came into the job, you're either a certified instructor or you're a training counselor. Those are the only two designations we have available right now. And because of that, we have no instructor journey. We have no way to differentiate, the kid who graduates on Sunday and gets his CI, certified instructor card, and has never taught anybody, and the old hand who's been around and taught thousands of people and is a consummate professional. Well, on the books, they're both a CI, or you could be a training counselor. So we had a bunch of people, roughly 50% in our history of our training counselors. And the job of the training counselor is to train new instructors. Well, we had people who were going out to get TC certified that never intended to train another person. They just wanted that extra credential to differentiate. So we're looking at ways to solve that and really put those people that are passionate about minting new instructors, right? And at the end of the day, it is a business decision. I get it. Why would I, especially when I lived in South Carolina, with a relatively low population density, why would I host a training instructor certification class where now I'm going to have 10 or 12 of my competitors within driving distance, almost by definition, of me? Right. That's kind of a conundrum there. So we're looking at ways to solve that in a smart way to support the community and really, again, just overall raise the bar, so to speak.
I had
I don't think anyone would argue with that mentality. I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and I think they're Steve Fisher had said to me one time, there's a lot of people that sit under a tree waiting for the fruit to fall. He goes, you got to kind of be that person that shakes the tree and makes the fruit fall. And and he said that he made the reference that I'm kind of like that. And I had just this past Friday, I just did a taser class down in Maryland, drove down to Maryland. I had one of my students who I certified in this area drive down to Maryland separately to take the course because he wanted to take the course and he wanted to take it from me, and it was on the calendar. So, and that's a competitor, local competitor, but I'm friendly, we're friendly, but there's certain things that I do that he doesn't do, that he comes to me for. And I think that people need to understand that. Instructors need to understand that it is a business. You're always evolving, just like we're always training. We're always trying to do. We hosted Masada Ub last year. We're hosting Tom Givens is coming up August up at Clint's area in Western PA. So as instructors, as training counselors, as senior training counselors, we need to make sure that we're always finding that new niche, that new thing, and keeping up to par on what we're doing. So if instructors are worried about that, and I've had people say that to me, well, I don't really want, you to do it in my area because I'm like, host me. And they're like, well, I don't want to host you because then we're going to make a bunch of instructors in my area. And I got to educate them. Like, you're missing the point. If you host me, they're going to look to you, and then you got to look at what's the next thing, what's the next curriculum. Do I create my own? Do I find a company like Taser, like Sabre, like UTM to make your own curriculum to pitch to the industry?
That continuing education is just good for everybody. I mean,
sure.
The stuff you learn as a Sabre pepper spray instructor, you're going to take some of that and apply it somehow in your basic pistol class. Like there'll be totally. That elevates you. We are all like a product of our training that we have. But I think one of the things that's important for instructors to realize is there's enough work for everyone, and we can. I'm not saying be communist or nothing, but we can certainly have a community and help support one another. And as you said, Matt, I mean, I've got guys where like, nope, you should go see him. He's fantastic, and come back me when you've done this or what have you. And I think the students ultimately they appreciate that.
You're onto something there, Klint. It struck me. We had at our expo we had a few weeks back up in Milwaukee for the USCCA. I hosted an instructor only breakfast, actually two of them, and the thing that struck me the most about it was how giving and how willing to collaborate, cooperate with one another. I mean, it's not truly, and I'm not trying to sound, Pollyanna-ish. It's truly not a sum game, right? Like, I think this community of people these instructors who are at base genuinely invested in helping their fellow man learn how to responsibly protect themselves. You're not going to find a better group of human beings, right? Like that's why I love doing this job. And we had a young man in the front row of that breakfast who was frustrated. He couldn't get into a range, right, to host his class. And a guy in the back said, "Hey man, I live 40 minutes from you. Come to my range." And so it was great. And this is a competitor.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. I think you're right. This community. That's why I wanted to stay in it. It's just such a great group of people.
Yeah, as you can see, I have a background in music. And, if you go see a band or you talk to a guitar player, I'm going to say, probably never going to say, "Hey, you want to play my guitar?"
Right.
But you go to a range and the guy, "Hey, you want to shoot my gun?" "Oh, I don't have any ammo." "Well, here, you can use my ammo." I'll even load the mags for you. Like it definitely is a little bit of a different mindset. And there is a nice community vibe to the majority of, especially for the
majority. Yeah, that's right.
The only problem in New York, Clint, is that's illegal.
No. Wow, that's possession without transfer, and now
we got to do a background check on that ammo. If
the RSOs were also FFLs, they could do the transfers right there on the range. That would be kind of convenient, wouldn't it?
If we had good signal, and the state charges $2.50 for the background check now.
Yeah, and you guys are going the way we are with the PIC system. You have your own system now, which I can tell you from experience that will crash randomly. Yeah. We sued the leadership of the state police. You can't sue the state police. Firearms Owners Against Crime, ILEA, sued them because instant background checks were taking days.
Yeah.
And it's amazing. During the case, when it was being argued, Josh Prince was our attorney. They were saying, "Oh, well, we're understaffed. We don't have enough people, blah, blah, blah." When we got the judgment, before they hired anyone, like the delays went away. So I think someone figured out how to plug the router in or something. It was pretty interesting, but let's hope that doesn't occur in New York for you.
Already has. First day, right off the get-go.
Yeah.
But well, Rob, it's been awesome having you on. Anything new coming that you can release the cat out of the bag here on Meet the Pressers, and we can get the official? Oh, he said it on Meet the Pressers for the first time.
Yeah, I will tease. The program that we're coming out with. So I'll tell you this. My intention is to get our agency, the USCCA, on a rhythm so that every year at SHOT Show we release something, whether it's a new product, a new training program, whatever that is, so that I want everyone in the community to anticipate that. I think there's a lot of power in anticipation. Product. Yeah, that's right. And of course, SHOT Show is the Super Bowl, so I want to. I'm excited, man. We're pretty far down the road, with our new defensive pistol program, it's a complement to, we built ourselves on DSF, defensive shooting fundamentals, and now this natural progression, I think, is a broader defensive pistol program. We've got George Harris is an advisor, legend in the community. I've spent a lot of time with him lately, and have really enjoyed his book, the brand new Marksmanship Simplified. It's one of those it's one of those books that you just can't argue with. It's just so damn fundamentally sound, right? And so check that out, especially for those that are working with new shooters or working with someone who maybe struggles a little bit. That's a great resource. But yeah, DPP is coming out. We'll announce that officially at SHOT Show, but I'm excited about, what that's going to look like going forward.
And then can you talk about DSF and DSF level 1 and level 2? Is that completely going away? Or the instructors that are already certified in that going to be turned over to DPP, or are they going to have to do any remedial? How does that?
Yeah, we're going to obviously figure, and I mean, I've been in this job 115 days now, so we want to be fair, we want to be reasonable to everyone. DPP is a different program, so we're going to have to, you can't just say, "Oh yeah, well I learned DSF, so now I'm this." No, you got to learn the curriculum, and we'll figure out how to do that.
Sure.
We're not killing DSF by any means. It's just, this is our new defensive pistol program. It's different way of doing drills, it's just a different way of teaching in a way. I I think, looking at both programs, I think this one's more scalable and more chunkable, if that makes sense. Like the new modern consumer, all of us are used to bite-sized things, right?
Yeah.
Short videos on YouTube or what's popular. And DSF as a program wasn't really conducive to breaking it up. DPP, I think you guys will see when I'm excited to show it to you. I think you'll see that it's a little bit easier to chunk it. And I think, for those instructors out there, I think that's what your customers are going to be looking for too. No, I think gone are the days when you have like a 9-hour class on a Saturday, right? Like, hey, if I can come out and do an hour over a period of 6 or 8 weeks versus 8 hours on one Saturday, one, you get diminishing returns, right? So like I said, excited about that. It's not, we're not canning anything. It's just, this is the new thing. And this is what we're going to be, kind of supporting moving forward.
Yeah, definitely the trend has been leaning towards over the last 10 years. You could see how it's kind of migrated that way, the shorter chunks. Mike Hughes from Next Level Training talks about the efficacy of doing, he calls them 10-second trainings. That's a little bit different than doing a 2-hour module, but it's much more, it's digestible. It's, in general, it can be a less investment of time and money for the end user. So they're more likely to take that first class in a shorter one. And, frankly, you said one of the biggest challenges a lot of instructors have is that range availability. And if their rental of the range is only 3 hours or 2 hours as opposed to 9 or 10 hours, then that obviously makes it a little more affordable to put the class on.
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we're just trying to be as an imaginative and supportive as we can for the community and just kind of meet the customer where they are.
That's smart. It gives people more options too, especially people that might not have a range like we just talked about. Somebody who might not have the time, or or they can only afford to do a small block of time somewheres, or they can only get a room for a certain amount of time. In New York, we've got the 18-hour class, and I originally did it where it was one night, 1 4 or 5 hour night a week through the month. And then I started doing 2 9-hour days during the week, and then also 2 9-hour days in the weekend. And it's all over the board. It depends. Sometimes I'll get more in the night classes. Sometimes I'll get more in the weekday classes, which is crazy. And usually the 9-hour weekends, or the 2 9-hour days in the weekend, are the most visited. But yeah, I was humbly surprised that I'm getting them on other days too. And because they do this full time, I want to be able to make it available to other people that maybe work on weekends or work nights.
Yeah, right. A lot of times when I consult with ranges, offer that 2 hours every Thursday night for 4 weeks, but then maybe every other month offer it as a long form, like full Saturday burn class, and you're going to get 2 different types of people sign up.
Totally.
Right.
So it's all about offering those options, and then that's more opportunity for our fellow Americans to become better, well-regulated in the true sense, and be responsibly armed and confident defenders of their family.
For sure. Well, on that note, Rob, how can people find out more about you and keep up with everything that's going on at the USCCA, and especially with what you've got going on with the USCCA?
Yeah, I mean, just started our website, uscca.com, and there's tons of resources there. We're standing up an instructor support network, which we've really never had, to really engage with our instructors, who are really going to be our front line, our brand ambassadors. My vision is that we have these 8,000 to 10,000 instructors out there who are really interacting with their fellow, citizens and spreading the, good training and the reasonable, thoughtful programs that'll help people, again, like Klint was saying, become a competent, confident protector of themselves and the people they care about.
It's awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, we greatly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I really enjoyed it, guys. We'll hopefully do it sometime again soon.
Definitely. Yeah, you're welcome. Welcome anytime. You're welcome on the range anytime.
Thanks for what you guys do.
Thanks for what you do. Stay safe.
There's a lot of sponsors that make this show possible, like Mantis.
Make sure you check them out and give them your business.
This episode is brought to you by Saber Red, pepper spray and safety products for all Americans. Next Level Training, makers of CERT training products. Mantis. Mantis X helps shooters suck less. Firearms Owners Against Crime Institute for Legal, Legislative, and Educational Action. Meet the Pressers is also supported by other shows, companies, and our Patreon members. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening to our show.
Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. Click that little bell thingy so you know when the next episode's uploaded. Support us on Patreon. Come to one of our classes. Host us to come to you and do one of our classes at your location.
And until next time,
Adieu.
Thank you for watching Meet the Pressers.